All right, all you chess-playing maniacs in the world, welcome to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I'm the Backyard Professor, the Backyard Chump, the Backyard Dweeb, whatever the heck you want to call me. Will you just sit there where I put you? Man, have I got a Bobby Fischer chess game for you guys. By the way, 1.5 more pounds I've lost. I've gone down. It's working. Yeah, it's going too slow for me to achieve my goal by the 4th of July, but I'm gonna be close. So this is working, man. Yeah, baby. Body, mind, spirit. Right now we're gonna focus on the mind. Woohoo! We're gonna show a Bobby Fischer game that is really interesting. Fischer is the white. They're gonna play a Sicilian defense. Knight f3. D6, D4, he pushes it all the way to 4 this time. Sometimes we've noticed Bobby Fischer would do that one first and then push the D4. Here he does not. He just simply goes right to D4. C takes D4 and the knight takes D4. This is a typical white response to the Sicilian. And now G6. He's going to fianchetto the bishop. Fischer will pull out his other knight, securing his center, pulling the bishop out, fighting hard for the center. Bishop E3. Bobby Fischer takes complete control of the center until, of course, that knight move. And then Black says, no, I want it. And Fischer says, fine, I'm going to support it. You're going to have to fight me for it. And he says, fine, I will fight you for it. I will pull out my other knight too. I have 2 of these animals and steeds as well. And Fischer goes, fine, I'll put my queen to D2 and I will show you who is in charge. And his opponent says, fine, I will castle so that I can attack in the center. And Fischer goes, fine, I will put my bishop to C4 and I will continue charging and dominating you in the center, man. And his opponent says, fine, I will put the bishop to D6. Are you getting sick of me saying, fine? I am too. So can I come up with something different? These guys are developing really well. Not giving an inch, they are just absolutely every cotton-picking square in the center is contested. Yes, they are not kidding around. They want this game won. And now Fischer does H4. Kind of interesting. The first technical side, edge push. His opponent brings in his rooks. Rook C8. Fischer says, not a problem. I'm going to secure my bishop, put him down so that I can keep this diagonal. He doesn't want his bishop swapped in the middle discussion that's coming up. Yes. Watch. Queen A5. Gonna be a tough battle here. Fischer recognizes it very interestingly, pushing the queen to the side. Fischer castles long to ward that queen. Gutsy or stupid? Or desperate? Nope, just Fischer. And now knight H5, and that wasn't the best way to do it, because basically what he's doing is he's putting his knight in front of the white pawns, and Fischer's going to go after him. In the meantime, in the process, gaining tempo, but also gaining space. It's a good idea. It really is. So he responds with knight takes the central pawn. Here comes the battle. The bishop takes the knight and says, that's fine, I can handle this. The bishop takes the bishop, and Black says, yes, I can handle this too. And Bobby says, well, my queen is going to take your bishop. So some exchanges have occurred with some ideas here that has clarified the conglomerated center at this point, but it is still in dispute without question. Puts his knight to f4. Now notice now, there's the hole, isn't it? You can see how the pawn's form here leaves f4 as a hole. He can park his knight and a pawn cannot chase that knight away. Now, he doesn't have a pawn backing him at this point, but he won't be chased away by a piece of lesser value. If Bobby gets rid of that knight, it's because he will have to exchange it off with either a bishop or a knight. So that's the idea of a hole. When you see a hole, go after it. Incidentally, I wanted to thank Username for playing me so many games of chess. I played a really decent game of chess against him today because he had some weak squares, like this one is, and I went after him. I didn't win the game, of course, but the day is coming where I want to. I'll put it that way. We're having a great time. Thank you for helping train me. I appreciate that, Juicer. Excellent, excellent player. So this reminded me, when you see a hole like that, grab it. That's always good. Besides, really, yeah, I know the king's over here, but gosh, that's a pretty good control of territory, right? If he can bring some of his pawns through here, or however he does it. So Bobby goes to King Bishop 1. He needs to guard the pawn. He doesn't want to keep this bishop here forever. He's going to want to attack eventually, so he just wants to secure the A pawn with the king. And when you castle queenside, you do want to get your king over to B1 sooner or later. Truly, that's the proper move. And now the knight again will move to E6, right? And Bobby drops his queen back to D2, securing the partial file. Bobby has that, while Black has the partial C file. No one's really found a way yet to start using their files, but they have them. Rook F to E8. He's going to push in more to the center. And now look at this line and row of pawns, gaining more space. He eliminates, notice how, just as a lesson, we all know this already, I'm sure, but it's worth repeating, honestly. Here, F4 is a weakness. If you have holes in your pawn structure, and you have a chance to advance the backward pawn, you eliminate the weakness. And so that's what Fischer did. With this structure, there are no weaknesses in the pawns. Isn't that interesting? So by pushing the pawn forward, there's the weakness. And I mean, it's glaringly obvious. That pawn is just boink, shut down. Yeah. Since he moved it, that's the way to get rid of the backward pawn and the hole that your opponent can take advantage of. Just a quick little idea, right? And now, once again, the knight goes to C5, and Bobby pushes the H pawn forward. He's coming. He doesn't have the ideal setup. Would be to push your pawns through, beat up the king side, and back those pawns with pieces. Fischer has half of the ingredients here, the pawns, but all of his pieces are over here. So, but he is getting a great pawn advance at this point, yeah? Just so you watch. Finally, the knight on the fifth move, fifth or sixth, takes the bishop, and he'll take it with the A pawn. And now, the bishop takes G4. Blam. Okay, so the powerful pawn advance is diminished somewhat. Rook D to G1. Fischer's going to grab the files straight across from the king. Botvinnik, whichever one he said, whichever one it was. I'm sure all the grandmasters say this, truly. But anytime you can put a rook across from a king, bravo, do it. Doesn't matter how many pieces or pawns are in between the two. Eventually, this can give us tactics, right? And we all know chess is about tactics, don't we? If we don't, we haven't been paying attention. Come and play the guys in my chess club. They'll show you what tactics is. I promise. I know from personal experience. Boy, do I know from personal experience. Hi, do I know from personal experience. Bop it up F5. Now, the pawn structure is somewhat compromised on Fischer's. The pawn structure is somewhat compromised on his opponent's. And there is some tension here. And, well, there's some tension. So this could get broken up. And Fischer is just thinking in the future, if and when it gets broke up, I want to have the diagonal, and I want to have those rooks there. Yeah. He has the knight as opposed to the bishop. Nice that the bishop is on the outside of the pawn chain. That's called a useful bishop, even though it's technically a bad bishop. But is it? Because these pawns are on the dark squares, not the light squares. So anyway, that bishop is functional and useful. It's not a bad bishop as such. Were it back here, it wouldn't inspire us nearly as much, would it? It just wouldn't look as grand because it just doesn't do as much, right? But instead, it is excellently placed there at this point, just so we know. Just another idea in pawn paradise. H takes G6. He's going to try to break up the structure of the pawns. H takes G6. Now he's got the direct lane to the king, which is always in Bobby Fischer's favor because of who he is, or any of us actually. So this is good at this point. And now he goes B4. Yeah, there's a question mark. It's Queen H. Instead of true, I know he acquired a target. Target. Yeah. Well, in this instance, though, really, Queen to H2 was so much better. Yeah. Right? Sincerely. You play one weak move and you can pay for it for the rest of your game. It's what I do with all of you. I play 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 weak moves and I pay for it. But anyway, so yeah, he acquires a target, but it's not as useful. And in fact, the queen just simply takes the pawn. It does move the queen to a different file and a different position. Not that big of a deal. Bobby takes the bishop and he goes down the exchange, but what he's hoping for in compensation is a better opening and attack against the king side with a queen and a rook. So that bishop outpost was really good, really. It is valuable to destroy it, to open up this king so that he can get other pieces in. That was Bobby's thinking. I mean, obviously, that's what he's thinking. You can see that. So let's see if his strategy works. And now black makes a spectacular move. Really powerful. Rook takes C3. If Bobby can break up black's king side, black will return the favor. and break up Bobby's kingside, eliminating one more piece also. Very, very well done. Rather than react, now, let's be honest with ourselves. If you were white, you'd be sweating bullets right now. Right? I mean, holy shish kebab. And now you'd be sweating bullets, right? Don't lie to me. Yeah. So, Black really does a great move here. Fischer refuses to just react. Again, another lesson. The same lesson that we hear in every Grandmaster game, but it's what helps us win more. If you can help it, try hard not to just play reactionary chess. Yeah, so what do you do? Nothing here. He went ahead and took the pawn here, giving him a real sweet pawn toward that king, a pass pawn, yeah? So this is getting tough. This is getting tight. And now Black really puts on another fabulous move. This was pretty good. Wow. Rook to h3. And he puts the kibosh on any kind of attack on the file. And he puts the kibosh about promoting any kind of passed pawn with just that one move. That was a great move. Really, truly, that was good. So, you say, yeah, but he got the queen. He gave up the queen. Yes, he did. He did give up the queen. He kept both rooks, and he goes check. So, king day 2, and king comes to g7. See, here we go. He can't possibly protect that pawn, so he pushes the e5. D will take the e5. Black has passed pawns of his own, doesn't he? Queen will take b7. Now, a queen against 2 rooks is a very, very interesting situation. The rook comes bebopping back home to h8. Gotta keep a lid on things, man. Queen comes to e4, fighting in the center. King is going to centralize further with f6, helping protect his pawns. Queen is going to take g4. Never underestimate the power of a queen, right? Rook h to g8, stopping the passed pawn for certain. And now b4. He's got pawns on both sides. So by functioning on both sides and beginning to put pressure on, it kind of hopefully will stretch Black out. Yeah? Because there's no choice. The closer this one anyway, this one may not make it, but this one, the closer this one gets to here, the more nervous Black is going to get to go that way. He's already very nervous. He's on defense right now, and he's not going to get that rook out of there. That rook is where he wants to be. You can't just let that pawn go. So this, let's keep watching. This is it. Well, in fact, he takes the pawn. Yeah. Rook takes g6. Let's stop this right now. The advantage, of course, is so that he can focus over here on these pawns. Right? That makes sense. Queen f3, check. Don't underestimate the power of a queen. Queen e3. Rook e6. Don't underestimate the power of 2 rooks against a queen. Queen takes a7. Here comes the power of the queen. And now 2 passed pawns without any pawn interference. Getting dicey for Black. Rook d8. Queen can zip all the way down to check the king. King comes to f7. b5. Here come the pawns. Rook d to d6. A solid wall of power there. C4, he's going to keep his pawns together. E4, black is going to push his pawn. He's got the rook behind the pawn where it belongs. Rooks belong behind your passed pawns, just as surely as rooks belong on open files. So black is playing this right. He's got it all tight and grouped together, so there can't be a whole lot of tactical trickery going on here. Fischer has his eye on this side for his pawns to push, and his king's over here to help him belt him in. Let's see if he can do this. C5. Who was it? The world champion, I believe Max Irva, said if you have a pair of pawns against a rook and they have only 4 squares between them and home base, the pawns will overwhelm the rook. However, he has 2 of them. So let's see. This is going to be an extremely interesting endgame study. I love this kind of stuff here. This is going to be great. Rook, D2 check. We must be careful of tactics, of getting the king and queen on the same aisle, and the rook checking and getting a queen, right? So you got to be careful. So he moves away from the queen. And now E3. You know, black's got power of his own. Here we go. What the heck? How are you going to do this? Because that rook is spot on where it needs to be. White cannot afford to just be on defense blocking that pawn with the queen. What do? You change your name to Bobby Fischer. Let's watch. You think I'm kidding? If I was in the, when I go to my tournament in April, and if I get into this position, I'm going to scream at my opponent, "Ha! No problem, I'm Bobby Fischer. I'm going to change my name to Bobby Fischer. I'm going to win." Well, I mean, you know, magic words. Yeah, whatever. Get on with the game. So, E3. And then King C3. Yeah, well, no. That wasn't right. And then Rook F2. And that wasn't right either. The idea for black, he wants to keep his rooks active. And so D5 was a much better position for his rooks. The pawn's covered. Don't sweat it. That pawn's going in because of this rook. Keep this rook active in the center. You know, coming here to F2 takes him. It leaves one rook almost overworking the rook, doesn't it? Because one rook cannot handle 2 pawns when they're together like that. Did you know that? You can bust these pawns in if all you're against is one rook. Well, dropping the rook down and then coming over here kind of makes it like it's one rook. And yet he has to guard this pawn. So black kind of getting... And of course, Fischer's going to take advantage of it. 2 pawns together against a rook, the pawns will always win. Don't forget that. That could save your bacon someday. Carry. Well, he does come back up to F5. Okay, yeah, I made my cute little excursion here. I got to get back over to where I need to be. But in the meantime, Fischer's pawns have made progress. So, it's getting tough. And Queen B1. Granted, it's not a rook, but yeah, get that piece behind that pawn and then go, man, go, man, go, man, go. King F6, keep it tight together. Don't make it so that you have any superfluous checks and lose a pawn or a rook. That's good strategy. And King D3, the king is a fighting piece in the end game. You can use him to attack. Why not? At least contact that pawn. Yeah. No, you can't take it with the king. But don't just let it free. E2. Boy, here we go. Yowzer. C7. What a great endgame study, yeah? Is that still recording? Oh, yeah, I'm good. I got to make sure that little red button's on. Sometimes either my card or my battery or whatever goes. And then you guys miss all this silliness that I'm showing you, this greatness in Bobby Fischer's game. C7. And now Rook to C5. Yeah. Bobby's limited with just the queen. The queen does belong behind the passed pawn, but so do the rooks, either direction. Rook behind the passed pawn, bump that baby in if you can, and rook behind passed pawn, destroy it. Black's playing this right. Very cool endgame, right? Great endgame study. No joke. This is fast. Well, okay. Support the pawn. Two pawns together can beat a rook. That's the lesson here for our endgame studies, isn't it? What a great endgame with Bobby Fischer. Yeah, I love this stuff. This is great. And now, Black, the comment, I mean, yeah, you want to get a queen, but this just leads to nowhere for Black. Yeah, because now the queen takes it. And unfortunately, Fischer has advanced a pawn, so now he can't come over and take the pawn. Right? So, that wasn't so hot. However, Fischer lost the queen, but it doesn't matter because he's going to get it back. Now watch this. No kidding. I know. Sometimes it's hard to believe. When I first ran across this principle from Max Erva, the former world champion, he did defeat Alexander Alekhine for the crown. He had enough chess experience. He taught two connected pawns, if they have less than 4 squares between them and the home square to queen, they can defeat a rook. We're about to see that. Just, this is exquisite to know. Just so you, that's why in the end game, if you can, keep 2 pawns together, if at all possible. Yeah, this is great stuff, isn't it? So what was I lying about? Rook c5, b6. I did that already. Queen take, rook take, b7. Yeah, so now rook takes the pawn and the other pawn queens. Nice. We have seen it. We have seen it. They started down here, didn't they? And through time, even with 2 rooks on the board, through time, one of the pawns got into queen. So Fischer gets his queen back, which is very, very fortunate. And rook d7 check. You see what Black is subtly trying to do? He's trying to push the king over here so that he can get a check and take the queen. Just move the rooks back and forth and push the king over and get that queen. That's what Black's hoping. You see that? So what do we do? What do we do? Go toward one of the rooks. And then that tactic does not work. Make sure you grasp this. This is great endgame studies. Don't go straight across. Do not do that. Because now he can force you over. Right? So don't go straight across. Go toward the rook. Fun little tip. Yeah. So now the rook has to come up to continue checking him, right? Rook e2, and then king just bumps straight up c3. And rook comes to e3, check. And you go back to c2. And now rook to d6. So Black realizes his strategy is not going to work to get rid of that queen. Not at this point. Yeah? So now queen h8. Don't underestimate the power of a queen. Watch your diagonals. Hopefully there's a rook here. There's not, but kind of close. You never know when you can pick off a rook. King to g5. Queen to G8. Any rooks behind here? No, but hopefully sometime there will be. King to F4. Okay, they're on a diagonal. However, he can't get to it. So he comes all the way to G2 instead. And now Rook to E5. They're going to keep a tight grouping. The one rook is supported by the pawn. Queen H2 check. Hopefully he'll get something. Nope. King F5. He's being careful. Queen H5. You got a rook over here. Can he get him? No, because he goes to E6. He's covering. The king is staying in contact with the rook. Queen G4. Check. Can he get a rook here? Yeah, but it blocks the check. And you go, oh, yeah. So, what about Queen E4? Yeah? Well, the rook just kind of bumps again between the king and the rook. And after another 48 moves of maneuvering around, they called a draw. And I'm not going to torture you with the next 48 moves. It was a 105-move game. At this point, this was the longest tournament game recorded that we have of Bobby Fischer, and he played it when he was 13. So that alone is impressive, that he did not blunder and goof it up against such a strong opponent. But he did take him to a draw. So there's your chess lesson. The very cool ideas in the endgame. I think we've got the cream of the crop of what this lesson shows us for us to improve our endgame. So kind of cool that we got that. Anyway, remember, be good, do well, have fun, be kind, drink lots of water. Truly, seriously. Lose some weight, you lazy swabbies. I'm kidding. If you don't need to lose weight, don't sweat it. If you do like me, then be patient with yourself. Don't be hard on yourself, but be firm with yourself and just keep going. It works, but it works in small bits. Kind of like improving chess, you know. You don't play 3 games of chess and all of a sudden, ta-da, I'm a grandmaster. No, you've got to lose thousands of games of chess. I'm on my way. I've lost hundreds. I literally have lost hundreds of games of chess. But that's how we learn, so it's okay. It's cool. It's all good. So, thanks for watching my videos. I will see you guys in the next Backyard Professor Chess video coming up shortly. It's Memorial Day weekend, a 3-day weekend. I might get quite a few videos made because it's really, really raining. Even though I do have to work on my back porch and my back deck. I've got to redo it because it's the ugly part of the yard. And we have summer barbecues coming up. You know, the difficulties. Whatever. Shut up and turn the video off, dude. Here she comes, quick. Hide.